let's have you read the beginning. We have it shared here. So why don't you read up to this? So I have that first little mark there. Let's see if I can do this. Just read from the beginning down to there.
Okay. I had realized that my brother was a goner when on her first day in the school, running into me.
No. Sorry. Crunchy, start at the top.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, start at the top and then read down to there.
Yeah, those summer holidays, though that years back, not that many, just in case you mistake me for an old codger drumming up old memories and living off them, have always stayed afresh in my mind. No, that is not really correct. That summer remains among the happiest times of my life, as any antidepressant pill which I take, which I can take daily with my Omkara to center my mind and remove the stress before the morning yoga exercise. I did lose my last baby tooth also that summer, so there is a lasting dental memory. Got 3 rupees paid for that. The 3 rupees I got for that paid for the Indira comic of a Flash Gordon. But the memory that outranks it, the transcendental memory, if you please, for that summer was a series of challenges and conflicts. Me and my elder sister Didi engaged to win the weekly prize. The weekly prize was a treat every Sunday evening. Chacha brought home 2 bottles of Coca-Cola to be shared by the kids. Didi, yours truly, Kaushalya, my twin cousin sister, Babbu, my younger brother, and his twin cousin, Kekai. Every week, the bane of the Indian ruling class everywhere, and the product of European feudalism, the prerogative of an older sibling to aggrandize the lion's share for themselves, meant that Didi got the 1 bottle of Coca-Cola, and we, the proletariat, were forced to share the 1 bottle of 200 milliliters among ourselves. Each would get a dram of 50 milliliters at the most. Well, not 4, but 5 shares. Yeah. From her early babyhood, our next door neighbor, Sumitra, my brother's classmate, always took meals with us. So our mother had from very early got into the habit of putting a place setting for her on the dining table. The difference that time has wrought is that Sumitra now sets the place settings for everyone in the family, including her mother-in-law, returning the favor.
Okay, thank you, Pranshu. Okay, so Pranshu, I'm going to kick it back to you. And so what's the problem with this beginning? Why don't you talk to me about it? I mean, yeah, why don't you talk to me about, there's, like I'm saying, there's much that I love here. I love the fact that you are absolutely, I can tell that you're going into this world, right? I can tell that for you, this world is a very rich place. I can feel how it kind of makes your minds, turn to like a fire turbine, turbine, just gathering fuel from everywhere. It's just, it's talking about European feudalism. It's talking about, just everything on earth, basically. You're just on fire with it. But why don't you kind of address, like, what is it that we want to do in the beginning of a story?
Yeah, so exactly. So the story is really about the contest, the right to win the first bottle of Coca-Cola. They were basically, we just used to have 2 bottles. So right. The right to win the first bottle, drink that. Okay, and that is not coming. Yeah.
Good. And what do we, so we have a certain nomenclature here that we've been developing in our storytelling. What do we call that thing? What's the universal term that we apply to that? You're saying about the Coca-Cola, but what do we call it?
Well, the goal, the object of the how do you call the framing story, basically.
Right. Well, okay. So, and the term that we like to use, I mean, we can use a bunch of different terms, but we want to be clear with ourselves. This is probably why I teach. It's like I keep trying to remind myself of these things. I believe the principles are true. It basically, we call it the external struggle or the conflict, external conflict. Okay. So the external struggle or conflict, that is this Coca-Cola thing. And it is great and it works. Okay. It doesn't matter how small that conflict is, because if it's important to the characters, I mean, just like playing a card game or anything, you can say, well, this doesn't matter in the world generally, but it matters to the characters, doesn't it? Like it's crucially important. So this thing with the Coca-Cola is charming. I think it absolutely works. Why do we need the external struggle?
Oh, basically that basically then positions your protagonist and the other and the opposite in place.
It does. And what does it do for the reader?
Oh, so they basically realize, like, they basically have a goal. Basically, they have a camp they can basically assign to. They can align to, like, what's the expectation of what's going to be the result of this race, this
Okay,
this
good,
change.
good. You're right. Okay, the result. So the alignment and point of view is a slightly different issue of the framing. So there is the framing of point of view. This is the framing of the external conflict, and what I've reduced it to is it makes the reader, the audience, it doesn't matter if it's a movie or whatever, it makes the audience wonder what is going to happen. So, and this is important, and will come up later. The reader is not reading to find out what is happening, right? They want to know what is happening, and they want to wonder what's going to happen. What's going to be the result of this? So that wondering about basically yeah.
Sorry, my daughter, I was just trying to get her away. So.
No worries. So the external conflict should be, and as we've said before, a tangible goal, right, that makes the reader wonder what's going to happen at the end. Basically, right. It makes the reader wonder who's going to win and who's not going to win, right? Will the protagonist, the one that we're associated with, are they going to win or are they not going to win? Even though finally the trick of our stories, and this is for all of us generally, the trick of our stories is that our stories do not end with someone winning and someone losing. Right. I've argued before that if it ends with someone winning and someone losing, then that ending was in a sense predetermined. It basically meant that one side of the protagonist-antagonist struggle was stronger than the other. They were stronger than the other in the beginning, and then we just find out that they were. That's all that's happening. Right. So we don't really do that. That's not, I don't think that that's a story that really elevates. Our stories elevate with something that's more complex. There's a struggle. We wonder, the reader wonders what's going to happen. They get driven through the story because they wonder. But then in a sense, the reader is led to understand a more complex reality, right?
Right.
Okay, so I think that the Coca-Cola works. You kind of have that, but you don't get to it. You don't really establish it in the beginning.
Exactly.
You're doing all this other work, right? So I basically have to read through a number of pages before I'm actually grabbed by what's going on and before I actually see the characters engaged in this struggle. I'm arguing that in the modern world, your reader's not going to stick with you that long. We either grab them early or we lose them. That's basically the option. We either grab them or we lose them. Even if we grab them in the beginning, we can lose them anytime. Okay, so
Right.
that's the problem, right? So even if we get them in the beginning, we can lose them. But our first order of business is to grab them. Then, so the external struggle, what is the second thing that we need? There's another thing that we need more than.
It
Okay,
was
so
more of the hero's journey. Like, by the third weekend, the third Sunday, we all shared everything. So that was the idea that,
okay, so you have to be careful too, because since we use this construct of an external struggle and what's going to happen, a story. I've said this before, so let's put it into our mind and understand why I'm saying it. That's the most important thing. Not that I say it. I'm not making up rules, right? They're not my rules. To me, they make sense with understanding the reader. What does the reader want, and how do we draw them along in our story? So my understanding comes from a sense of what human beings are like. A story is not about a character engaged in a struggle and succeeding in their struggle. So the truth of your story, right, might be that, very soon you were all sharing it, or your point of view character, or you was what you were winning the Coca-Cola, right? That's fine. That's your past. But in terms of writing a story that's going to engage the reader, this is our motive, to grab the reader and to keep the reader. This is why we're writing. If we don't do that, our writing is, from our point of view, a waste of time. It might be good for us personally, but we have to be, we're basically saying we want to grab this reader. So I've told this story before, but so in this story where I get home from a restaurant, I realize that I've lost my wallet. I think it must be at the restaurant. I go back to the restaurant and they give me my wallet. That is not a story.
Right.
Not a story. I go back to the restaurant and I say, hey, I think I lost my wallet here. And the person at the front says, well, you did, but you were just here 2 minutes ago and I gave it to you. That's a story.
Right.
Right. So I don't have my wallet. I want my wallet. I don't have it. So you might have to adjust that. But the second thing that we need, and think about sports teams. When we go and watch a sporting event, right, they're having a contest, but it's not interesting to us unless we care.
Right.
We have to be a fan. We have to be aligned with the struggle of one of the characters, and the character that we're aligned with is the protagonist. So we need the external struggle and we need the second thing. What is that?
Sort of like engagement, or I would say investment in the character.
Right. And we're going to call that the internal struggle. So there's an external struggle. This is somewhat movie terminology. I think I probably picked it up from the movies. External struggle and internal struggle. What's at stake? Why does our protagonist need to win, basically? Why is it important that they do? If I don't understand why it's important for this kid to get the Coca-Cola.
It's like Coca-Cola.
Right, yeah. But if I don't understand why it's important for them to win, then it's just something that they want. They just want the trophy. But if it's important for their self-esteem, if it's important for their position in the family, for their status, we need to feel that it's a life and death issue for the protagonist. Now, we don't really understand the antagonist's points of view, but ideally we would over time, right? But at first we understand the protagonist's point of view. So those are two things that need to be established. In fact, I think all of us could do well. I probably could do well to do it too. Write these things down. In the beginning, we need to do a couple of things. We need to establish the external struggle. We need to establish the internal struggle. And then we need to do something else too, I feel, which is we have a lot of work to do. We need to establish the setting, where we are, the time, in the point of view. So when I say, like, we need to establish the setting, which is the time and location within the point of view, it means that we have to establish the point of view.
Right.
That point of view, in this case, in this story, is a child who is how old, Pranshu?
Oh, I was 12, 11, 12.
Okay. So we need a 12-year-old child who is witnessing the world around them. So this basically solidifies everything around this child. We understand that this is our protagonist. They're in this time period, in this location, involved in this external struggle, and possessing this internal struggle. 4 things.
Right.
The person who's writing at the beginning of your piece is not the child. So I am not in the child's point of view. Whose point of view am I in?
It's the person remembering it, the author, actually.
Yes, exactly. Which, all of this is a complicated way to say that I'm not in a scene. I'm not. And so what we do generally in stories is we'll start a story in the point of view of the character, involved in the struggle, which we sometimes call in media res, right? In the middle of the action, to use the Greek. So we establish the character. They see the world through their sensory perception, sight. They hear things, they smell things, they taste things, they touch things. So we're in the body of the point of view character. They experience their surroundings. It means that we're in scene, and they're in action. They're in the crucial action of struggle. And we get the interiority that allows us to know why it matters. So in total, what all these things do for the reader is they locate the reader in this character. They make the character kind of an avatar for us, right? So the audience ends up having an avatar of this character that they then inhabit as a vehicle and experience the world from inside that character. And now they're going through. So this is more than a movie, right? We have to understand that I think that this is the most powerful thing we can do as writers. We can do other things and experiment with those, but understand this aspect too, right? That movies have us always watching a screen, but in this case, again, the character is an avatar. We take the reader and we put them inside of this character, and then they experience the world like that. It's like the original video game, right? Is this writing? So that's it's kind of complex, but it also isn't that complex.
Right.
4 things. 4 things. Establish the setting in point of view. Start in media res, which is in the middle of the action, and then allow us the interiority to understand what the internal struggle is. We can think of this as either 3 or 4 things. Okay, the point of view, establishing the setting, is taking care of 2 of those things. Establishing point of view, establishing the setting, which is the time and location. That means we're already writing in scene, in action, and with some interiority so that we understand the internal struggle.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And earlier, my attempt was to describe, how it was we used to look forward to drinking Coca-Cola. It wasn't the soda was not a very common drink. It was it was something to look forward to and all that. So describing it was a lot more different world. And I think I should have stuck with that. That was my original idea, but then I moved away.
But you don't have to, don't explain anything to us. The reader is thirsty for information. They'll figure things out. If all of these children are buying for the Coca-Cola, they understand that it's precious, right? Just in the same way that we'll understand if everyone's vying for gold, that gold is precious. I mean, it is not inherently precious, but the fact that everyone's killing each other over it tells us that it is, right? The fact that these children are struggling for it tells us that it's precious. Right, it's our actions that make things such, So I would just really suggest that you just try to jump in. All the stuff that I do is, right, I talk about how these ideas, basically what we construct with words creates a kind of mental space for the reader to be in. I'm arguing that that space, there's an effective space that engages the reader fully as we can. A reader might not want to read about a 12-year-old kid who's trying to get Coca-Cola. We can't do anything about that. But everyone on Earth does become engaged in their own struggle. And so what we're trying to do is get them and put them in this kid who's engaged in their struggle. The struggle is a universal element shared by everybody. Everyone on Earth knows what it's like to want something. Look at my daughters. My daughter's like, if I bring out 2 pieces of cake, they both know which is the biggest piece. How is that? I mean, I've cut it exactly half and half, but they both know which is the biggest. And if they don't know, one of them, I'll say, which one do you want, Ozzy? And she'll go, that one. They'll say that one. They'll both say this one. Why is that? They're identical. But now one thinks that the other one knows which is bigger because she picked it and the other one picks it. So this is universal. We've all experienced this. We've all been rivals with our siblings, etc. So I'm going to beg you, Pranshu, try to write this beginning.
Right.
This is a great story. I think that what you've isolated as a story, it's a coming of age story. It's a very it's a very potent coming of age story, since it ends up, with the explosion of that airplane that affects this entire family. This could be an extremely good short story. I think that you should work on it as a short story, as a coming of age story. It has this childhood innocence, right? It moves from the classic movement from innocence to experience, right? So it has that classic coming of age element to it. It has this incredible world with all these kids, who think that
cheerleading section.
Right. And they think that the most important thing in the world is, having these little drams of Coca-Cola, the pegs, as you call them, like to have a peg of Coca-Cola is the greatest, achievement in the world. And that's going to change extremely starkly for everyone, right? As the world comes crashing in, basically, on this family, this insulated family. So I think it's an amazing story to delve into. The summer of '85 is an amazing thing to delve into. This environment with all these kids, it's fabulous. So you need to take care of the audience.
Right.
Spend some time. I'm really going to encourage you to write this story. So this is something that I've said many times in the past. If we have something that we know is a story, it is worth all the effort we bring to it in order to write that story well. When I was in graduate school, when I had a story, I gave that story basically a year of my life to write it well. It was 15 pages long. That also got me into Stanford. It also got me all sorts of other stuff. I had one story that I was like, this is a great story. I know it is. And so it's worth every effort. And I never turned away from it. For a year, Pranshu, for a year, it was my test piece. If you feel it, it's not for me to say it, right? Because it doesn't matter if I tell you it is. But if you understand that this is a great story to work on, then you should give it every effort to write it and complete it. The whole thing. You basically have the time period completed here. It's not, it's not going to capture anyone now. but you've put the skeleton of the story onto the page. Now it's worth working on it, making sure that you write it as a story so that it's a story that someone is going to pick up, not be able to put down, read to the end, and be moved by it. And if you can accomplish that, you will publish it. And this is, I mean, I think that this would be a fabulous story to make a movie out of. I mean, I can see the script of this movie. I would want to watch this movie. I mean, it's a really, really good story. But you have to decide whether you want to do that. My experience of you, Pranshu, is that you go many different directions. I'm the same way. You have an active mind. I can tell you, I've had many projects in my life. One thing that I've done classically in my experience is that when I get a story, when it gets tough, you know what I do? I start writing another story.
Right.
Sri Charan, we're going to talk to you about this too, I think. Right? So we just adopt another project. So that doesn't work. When I wrote the story that got me into Stanford, for example, and other stories that I've managed to publish, I did not turn away from it when it got tough. I continued to work on it. So that's going to be up to you, Pranshu. I'm not there to twist your arm, as we used to say back here. Yeah, I can't twist your arm and make you do it, right? You're a writer, and we writers are notoriously difficult to corral. We're worse than cats. Like, we cannot try and get 10 writers into one, to do one thing. No, you can't. We're rebellious. There's a reason we like working on our own and just typing in our little study. There's a reason. Everything has a reason. So, but Pranshu, I'm going to really encourage you to do it. It puts some weight on your shoulders. It does put weight on your shoulders to have a story, and now it's up to you to write it. Okay, no more fooling around. No more, oh, well, I guess that wasn't a story. No more letting yourself off the hook. I am telling you, this is a story.
Right.
So it's a question of whether you want to take the challenge on.
Yep.
But you've covered the parameters. You know the 4 things, or 3, depending on how you look at it. You know the 4 things to start with. Do that. I would like to see that next week, or I'd like to see that in 2 weeks. Let's make it next week. This is going to be for Sri Charan too. But you can't just work on the beginning. We don't want to just keep recursively working on the beginning of stories. You have the whole story here. This story should shoot for if you can shoot for 15 pages, do it. This first section, you don't have time to waste with all this talk. You don't have time to waste with talk about feudalism, okay? Don't have any feudalism. No feudalism in this piece. No, forget the ideas. Forget your ideas. Forget your brilliant mind. Forget everyone coming to you and saying, Pranshu, you're amazing. You're the intellect of an age. Forget that. It's not going to happen. You're going to find success by sticking with the story. That's what we do. It's very hard. I want people to pat me on the back and tell me I'm a great writer and that I'm so smart. I really do. But it's not what we're going to get. That's not our lot in life.
Right.
Anyway, I will really be excited to see this. You've done a great job isolating this Coca-Cola thing. It's a fabulous thing to, all these kids vying for the Coke. You do have the problem now of your protagonist being successful in getting the Coke. So you'll have to think about that. Think about whether that will work, because you need the character to be motivated by what they want. So if the easy thing is he wants the Coca-Cola, and that means that the answer has to be he doesn't get it, or else you lose that motivation. So
but there every week.
you can think about it being something else.
Right.
It might even be the admiration of the older sister, right? So like he thinks that he wants Coke. He thinks he wants the Coke, but that he really wants to he really wants the older sister to give him the Coke. Right? You know what she doesn't do, so he has to win it all the time. You know,
Yeah, and
that's
it was her last it was her last summer also, right? Before she was going to go to college. So she was like, she was also in a place, now I can look back and think what she was in that place, that she was going to go away, and so that was
right.
part of it.
Right. In some ways, she's a more approachable mother figure than the mother, perhaps. She's someone that's in range. There's all these kids around, and she's a person that's sort of like high up there and sort of in range. And he wants something from her that she's not giving him. And so instead, he has to do this rather annoying thing of winning the Coke, even so unjustly some of the time, right? Because he's cute, because he's a
Manipulated my
boy.
grandmother. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, Pranshu, I want to see this story just over and over again for the next year. Finish this story, publish it, and then we'll talk about writing the script together.
Okay, definitely.
Okay, Vandana, let's talk about your story.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Otis?
I'm doing great. Okay. Hey, can you read maybe read this first page and then talk to us a little bit about the story. You see my mark here? So just read from the top down.
Okay. Tears rolled down her cheeks. As the salt water passed through her face, her little heart yearned. The nimbus cloud covered the morning earth. Sitting in the playroom with her favorite toys and classmates, she felt alone. The teacher tried to console her, but no amount of coaxing and consoling helped the little girl. She was crying to her heart's content. It was her first day in the play school. Her mother had stepped out and promised to be on time, but was late. The hardcover suitcase of varying size were packed to its capacity. The teenage girl stepped out of her car for boarding the airplane. Sia wanted to stop back and move out of the present. She wished hard for time to stop, but it did not. Everybody that mattered in her world, her parents, sibling, family, and friends were with her. She wanted to be with them. She knew this feeling. Her heart yearned. She had grown up with it and knew it had to grow out. She hugged each one tighter than the previous one. She wanted to be with them, hug them tightly, just like her little self. Sia did not want to go, but she was left with no choice, nor any opinion. She wished time would halt. Time speeded up. Her departure was announced. She dreaded this moment, and so did her dear ones. Tears welled up, but did not flow.
Oh, that's it, Vandana. That's good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Just so that I'm not sure if my mark showed up. Okay, Vandana, tell us a little bit about this piece.
This story is about a little girl who had grown up as a teenager. This girl was very scared when she was a little girl. She was very scared to leave her parents or any of her family members and to go out. But as she grows up, she has taken such a big decision of going abroad to study. And not only abroad, but thousands of miles away from a place, from a comfort zone. So how did the transition happen? This is all the story about the story.
Okay. And it seems to go back and forth in time, right? So we have the child, and then we have the teenager who's about to travel abroad. Is that correct?
I couldn't hear you, pardon?
Yeah, so it goes back and forth between the child character, the small child, and the teenager who's going.
Yes.
Away, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Vandana, were you paying attention to that conversation that I was having with Pranshu?
Yes.
Okay, so what do you think that I would say about the beginning of this story, or what do you think that my point of view about what isn't happening in this story now?
The struggle, I think the struggle and grabbing the reader's attention.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's an issue about engaging the reader's attention, but it's Pranchu's piece. I know you haven't read Pranchu's piece, but what's really good about it, honestly, is that there's the external struggle that's available is very material. Okay, so by material, I mean it's a thing that we can really comprehend. It isn't that Pranchu's character, wants to be loved. Okay, right? I mean, as nice as that is, they want to be loved, or they want to be esteemed, or they want to be trusted, or they want, et cetera, these emotional things. No, his character wants this Coca-Cola. Mm-hmm. The reason a material struggle like that works so well is that the reader then is very aware of whether the character gets it or doesn't get it. The problem, Pranchu, sorry to pick on you again, the problem with Pranchu's piece is that his character gets the Coca-Cola. So that doesn't make us wonder what's going to happen anymore. We wonder whether the character is going to get the Coca-Cola or not, and then he doesn't. And then he tries again, and then he doesn't, and then he tries again. Stories are about characters trying to get something and failing. My father used to say, try and fail, and that basically is the spine of a story.
Okay.
So a tangible struggle is very useful for the reader because it engages us in a material struggle that we can see and understand, and we understand the outcomes of not getting it or getting it.
Okay.
And then that leads up, as I say, to the big kind of trick of it is that getting it ends up not being what's important, that what's important is more complicated than that. And this is a larger structure that takes place in stories that we can call chiasmus if we want, where the material struggle goes down in importance, but the spiritual struggle, internal struggle rises in importance. So we see one going down. So the struggle in Pranchu's piece, the struggle for the Coca-Cola we'll understand is not important, but the spiritual struggle will rise in importance. That he can be acknowledged by his older sister, whatever it's going to end up being, right? So that's called a chiasmus model. But yeah, Vandana, that's kind of what we want. So we want we want the material, as I said to him, we want the material struggle, the external struggle, we call it, and we need to know why it's important. What happens here, I mean, Vandana, there is a complicated way that I could talk to you about writing this piece particularly. I mean, there is a way to do it because what do I want to say? There's a way to do it basically as an essay, and you can create a sense of tension between the childlike person and then the more adult person. So you can basically be juxtaposing those two, and they can function sort of as protagonist and antagonist in a struggle that you present this one, then this one, then this one, then this one, then this one, right? So there is a way to do it. It's kind of a sophisticated, more writerly thing. And even if you execute it as well as you can possibly execute it, your readership for that piece is going to be less than a piece about kids who are vying for Coca-Cola.
Okay.
Because the piece that I could try and encourage you to write this piece, where you're juxtaposing, these two characters, textually as like the younger self and the older self back and forth in order to create a story that can be done. But I kind of want to encourage you to write the more, what I would call a classic story with external and internal struggles that focus on a single character moving through time in a journey. I would kind of encourage you to do that because that's like the basis of storytelling. And then everything else is sort of more abstract, it's kind of a more abstract way to write that same story, essentially. But I would love to encourage you to write this classic type of story and try to and experiment with it, because that's going to give you a firmer base. You've probably heard, I've heard this so many times that I almost can't bear hearing even myself say it again. But they say of Picasso, right? Picasso, painted these incredible abstract paintings that everyone admires. And then some people look at them and say, well, a child could have painted that thing, and it looks sloppy and just weird. But they always say of Picasso that he could paint classically. He was a classically trained painter. He could paint something that looked exactly like the thing that he was painting. And then he chose to paint this more abstract thing. This is somewhat the same. I would like to encourage you to be able to write the classic story in which there's nothing wrong with it, and use that as your test piece. And then from there, if you want to experiment with some other things, try to experiment with it. That's my big advice. That's Vandana. That's what I have to offer. I think that I really love in this story how you really take this child's experience, their emotional experience, very seriously, and you also really embrace this difficulty of this young woman leaving her family behind. I mean, I think that that's really great, and I would love to see that still used with the characters that you maybe develop in a more classic structure.
Okay, I got it. I get.
So, and sometimes, so there's some elements here, as I was saying to Pranshu, because he's a long way, he's got a lot of work to do, but he has developed those elements, and so that they're really worth the time. He understands the material element of the struggle of these children, right? The Coca-Cola aspect, right? And he has the time period, and he has the location. All of those things are really strong, and they're material. You need all of those things too, right? Once we have those, then we know that we really have a story that we can work with. But there is a level of gathering those things, gathering those material elements, the location, the time, the external struggle, and then further to understand the internal struggle of the character, the thing that makes the reader care about their struggle.
I get it. So I have to undo this one.
I would think of this as, if this is a character, and I think this is a character, Vandana, I'm going to just suggest, I can feel that you have, a true knowledge of this character. I would take this character and use her in a story, try and deduce a material struggle, something that she wants, that she's motivated to get, like Pranshu's character is motivated to get that Coca-Cola. Try and understand what that material struggle is and write about that. And then also try and understand what's driving this character to want that, right?
Yes.
But remember that I can feel I'm just guessing that there's an autobiographical element to this work, and we often write autobiographically, and Pranshu is too, and we all do. Try and understand that that even if we're drawing a character from ourselves, that they behave as a character. We're not just writing us as a story. We're not just sharing our lives as a story. We're constructing a protagonist that is involved in something in the story, what we call the external struggle, with forces of antagonism that makes the reader wonder what's going to happen. So we basically use this character that we're constructing from ourselves to play a role in our story structure. And that role is to play this character that engages the reader, and that the reader can use as basically this kind of avatar for the experience of the story. So just try and keep that in mind. We're not just, when we're writing a story, yes, at first, when we're drawn to writing stories, we want to share maybe things about our life, and I certainly was. We want to share things about our life, but finally, when we bring it up a level, what we're really doing is we're drawing upon our knowledge of life, we're drawing upon our knowledge of ourselves and our knowledge of others in order to construct this thing called a story, which is, at the end of the day, even if it's difficult, even if it's hard, it's basically a kind of entertainment, and it's both entertainment and a way for the reader to learn about life that's really constructed for the listener. So I think that that's the level that I think you're really exploring this character very well. And now I think we need to bring it up to the level of using this character or using other characters to write something that's a story that's going to draw the reader in and engage them.
So I have to do a lot of work with it.
There's some work to do, but I'm going to suggest one of the ways to save a lot of time is to do some thinking first, because thinking takes a lot less time than writing up all the pages. So like thinking about constructing, like you can even write for yourself, what's the external struggle? What does the character want? She wants Coca-Cola, right? Sorry, Pranchu, I'm leaning on you again. What is their internal struggle? She doesn't trust people, right? We can do a little work ahead of time that will save us, and we can conceptualize our story, and that can sort of shorten the amount of time that we're spending. That's very smart work to do ahead of time. So even if have you ever just sort of sketched, I think they call these, what are they called? Sritran, you will know, like brain maps and stuff like that, where you can make little circles around things and little arrows.
Mind mapping.
Mind mapping, yeah, thank you. You can do a little mind mapping on it. Whatever you do, I've done all sorts of things to try and conceptualize my stories. I've often just spent the time writing it because I guess I like to type a lot. I don't know. But there's a lot of ways to conceptualize your story ahead of time and then do the writing, and it will save you some time. The first stories I wrote, most of the first stories I wrote, I never published, of course. I wrote for years until, when did I finally publish? I published something when I was 30. So that means that every story that I wrote before I was 30 never was finished, right? But I was doing the work and developing my capacity so that I could publish a story afterwards. So it is fine to write your way to the point where you can write a story, or you can spend a little time. Ideally, the things I say are a little bit useful and we can try to apply them, and then that can save you some time. I mean, I think that that's what we're after here, right? Is trying to save you a little time.
Yes, no doubt.
But yes, it is a lot of work. It is truly a lot of work to write a story. People dedicate their lives to it. But if we do write a great story, like I was saying to Pranchu earlier, it is worth our every effort. Sri Charan, should we look at your work?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vandana.
Hey Otis, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, let's have you read down to here. From the beginning, and then you can talk to us a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. Okay. We have to go soon. Raju insisted again. You can count your stars another night. Tarek did not even reply to his friend this time. He shifted his focus from Sirius to Betelgeuse, and then to Sirius again. These were the only stars he could see even from the highest point of the town. Lights of the town and mist from the sky had obscured whatever stars were visible from here. He must search for another location tomorrow. The hills in the outskirts, perhaps? Someone might come, idiot. Let's go, Raju said. Here, this is under construction. No one comes now at night. It is late anyway. I need to go. Ajju said, okay. Ajju said she would make chicken curry tonight. Raju licked his lips, and I will buy one cool drink. They will close the shops if we go late. Tarak sighed. Didn't you ever want to know what is in the sky, Raju? Some foolish stars. What else? Raju said and turned his back to the steps down. I'm going. If you want to stay, stay. Tarak thought he should stay, but he gave up the idea. He should not be alone in this town at night. Ajju had even put a curfew after dinner. Thieves and murderers roamed the towns freely these days. Wait for me, he shouted and stood up reluctantly. He slid his hands into the side pocket of his recently torn jeans to check for the day labor. 300 rupees tucked safe.
All right, thank you. Okay, tell us a little bit about this story. Tell us about what's in the way we're talking about stories. Can you apply it to this story?
Yeah, I'll tell. So this is about a boy who had recently lost his parents and who had some dreams, but was forced to go into a situation where he is unable to achieve his dreams. So
Okay.
it is about a story how he had achieved his dreams.
It's a story about how he does then achieve his dreams?
Yes.
Okay. What's the external struggle for the character?
So external struggle is his conditions and how he fights with them, I suppose.
So
Maybe,
like let's say a boss or a foreman or something like that?
yeah, there is a boss. Yeah, and poverty.
Okay, and then what's the internal struggle?
So internal struggle, I don't think I knew at this point. So I had some kind of emotions conflicting with himself. Like, so he had his friends. He might need to struggle them sometime. I mean, betray them sometime in future to go over the steps to what his aim was.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I like it. Shritran, I like it. Okay, so the way I'm reading this in the beginning is that, the internal struggle is like the reality of his existence, it seems to me, and his aspirations for something else.
Yeah.
And that seems to be materialized with the telescope and looking at the stars, maybe through the smog of the city and all of that, that there's too many lights or whatever, right? There's a lot of reality that's getting in the way of his high aspiration, right? So,
yeah.
Okay, that's good. And then I do see that, right, he has to save his money, to buy, maybe buy the telescope, or even better yet, he doesn't have the telescope. He has to earn the money in order to buy it, right? So that becomes a very tangible external struggle too. Then there's so this story is going. This is 6 pages right now.
Oh, really?
But we're not. I would get it going faster. So I'm saying, if we're writing a very, very tight story, I would try and get the elements of the external struggle and the internal struggle, the setting, through point of view, all of those 4 things, I would try and get them happening in the first paragraph.
Okay.
If I could, I would do it in the first sentence. I want all of that stuff to be to grab the reader. Then this scene that he has on top of the roof, have it, and then stop it. Okay? Because this is not his issue with whether he loses his money and all of this stuff is kind of rambling. It's a little bit it's like a red herring. It's just like we're just following along a trail. No, instead, he's up at the roof. We've seen the scene. He wants to look at it. It's like, oh, there's too much smog. Maybe he needs to be like, what I need to do is I need to get to this mountain and climb to the top of the mountain and then look from there, and then I'll be able to see what I want to see, right? Whatever it is, whatever his aspiration is. do it, get it done, and then now let's get him working with his foreman. We need to establish an antagonistic force. The antagonist, so just like when we were talking about Pranchu's work in the CocaCola, exceptionally good external struggle. We also, and what the other thing that he has in that story is he has an exceptionally good antagonist, which is his older sister. His older sister is the antagonist. It's a long time to get to her, and she's not really on the page, and there's a lot of trouble there, but at least she exists. A material antagonist is also important for us, because then we can dramatize the struggle between them as characters. Yes. Rather than, like you said, the external struggle is, reality or whatever. We need someone to represent reality. Okay. Yes. And the person representing reality is maybe a boss, a foreman, right? But that all works. It works. You just have to be quicker and get the story going, and then build a story. The character trying to get what they want and then not getting it. Trying to get what they want and not getting it. The other aspect here a little bit is that this environment doesn't feel 100% real to me.
Okay.
So it's sort of like you're sitting, Sritran, I don't know what your experiences are.
I mean, I don't kind of projected myself onto him, so I am not able to see the stars anywhere here. So I had to go on long trips on the hills like that.
Yeah, so that's fine, but like the aspects of like, is this town real? Are these characters, I believe that this character is kind of real. He's a little unformulated. I want him to be more formulated. Okay, so like when we think of ourselves, Sritran, and this has been my case, when I think of myself, I'm an unformulated person when I think of myself. Our characters are not unformulated. They have to be very solidly situated on the page. But also, what town is this? It would be so much better if it was a real town. If I'm writing a boy in the city going down the streets, it was so wonderful, blah, 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 that sounds like nothing. But if I write like, I woke up in the morning, took the elevator down and walked down to 68th Street. 3rd Avenue was busy with buses and taxi cabs, people going to work. Okay, I'm in New York City. That's much more real than a boy in a town, da-da-da-da-da-da. It sounds like a fable. It sounds like a nowhere world in which you're just going to bestow lessons on us like Aesop. Yes. We don't want Aesop's fables. We want reality. Your reader wants to be like, I'm reading about a real person having real struggle, and I'm going to learn something from them. So make it all real, and then get on with it. Try and establish, so if we think about the beginning of this story, he has aspirations. There's something with the telescope, but maybe now he just has like a binoculars. I can even see this being like again, when we have a crafted story, we can see how it plays out as a movie, right? On his way to work at like someplace, who knows where it is? It's a very, very difficult place to work. But as he's going there, he has to walk by like the shopping district. And in the shopping district, there's this camera store. And in the camera store, they have these incredible cameras, but what they also have is this telescope. And the telescope has a price tag on it, which is going to be, tell me a big price in rupees, right? It's got a big price on it. And then he goes from there, and then he has to go down this place, and he goes into blah, da, 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 da. And now he has to do this work for like, gosh, who knows how, like 3 rupees an hour or whatever it is, something that's never going to be adequate enough to buy this telescope, right? Yes. We can see that. That's a movie, right? We can write the script, but you have to write it as a story where we're inside this character and we care about this struggle. If you can make that happen, you're going to have a story that's, a publishable story, but you have to make the reader believe it.
Yeah, I understood, but I have one question here. Like, so we need to create some situations, right? So that the protagonist overcomes them. Maybe say here, I think you're talking about the thief, about being some unreal, I mean, kind of, you are not able to believe such a town exists. So let's say I want to create a situation, but it is not really, it is plausible, but may not seem like a real town where it is happening, right? So should I go with that, or should I hold back just because it was not believable to the reader?
Yeah, don't raise them. It's not believable to the reader. If I don't believe it, it's
Maybe I
also,
will make
but,
it believable. Okay.
it's more than being so. You know, the thief.
I mean, it is not really too far unbelievable like fairies or magic or like that,
No,
but
sure, but it's still. But our character is just being victimized, right?
okay.
And you're not writing a story about a character being. I hope, writing a story about a victim is not that interesting. The story of a victim starts
No, I
here.
mean, he does not feel victimized at all. Like, he understands his situation, he feels its fate, and then
Yeah,
he thinks I have to work. He does not feel victimized. I mean, I wanted the character to be like that.
I'm arguing that it's a waste of
Yeah, yeah, okay.
time. Just trying. His external struggle is with reality. The reality is that he has these aspirations of being able to see these planets. He wants, let's say, and I would make them more specific. He wants to see the moons of Venus,
Hmm.
and I would say, and I would title it The Moons of Venus, right? He wants to see the moons of Venus, but he can't see them, or whatever it is. Shritran, you work it out, right? And his problem is he can't do that. He
Hmm.
can't afford the telescope. He can't go to the place or afford
Yes.
the telescope that's going to allow him to do that.
Yes.
He passes by it. We see the thing that he wants, that he thinks is going to make all his dreams come true. And this is what we
Hmm.
have, right? We all have that. We, like I live my life around here and I feel like, oh, I don't have the status that I want. I would achieve that status if I just drove a Tesla. If I drove a Tesla, my life would be changed and I would be transformed, right? We think these things. They're not
Yeah.
true, but we think them. This is
Yeah.
the human condition.
Yes.
So I would just try and get that story on the page and involve me in it. What do I forget what they call that. Oh, a thief. Okay, so a thief coming in and stealing his money is what's called a deus ex machina. Okay, so this is what we have in writing. It's the ghost, the God in the machine can come in and do the work of the author, and just take his money. Oh, I'm gonna have a
Yeah.
character written.
Yeah. I hate
There
it.
you go. Whoa, It's not that it is not that people in Hollywood don't do things like this. They do. They have Deus ex machinas come in order to start the story, but it's cheap. It's cheap.
Yeah.
The reality of his situation is already there. He's lost his parents, right? So there's a hidden law. Losing his parents is kind of a Deus ex machina, but it's in the backstory. Almost every fable begins with a Deus ex machina in the backstory. We always have an orphan. We have Cinderella. We have whatever, the parents, the mother's dead, the father's dead, someone's dead, right? So that we do start with that unstable ground situation in order to basically animate this character, animate their aspirations.
Yeah. Got it.
So that is common, but to have them in the story itself, I'm going to suggest you don't need it because it feels again a little bit convenient to the reader that the author is just using a Deus ex machina in order to advance their
I
plot.
mean, I want to expand on what's going on. I mean, up to after this point, so that I don't feel that's Deus ex machina right now, because what happens is, so the thief has stolen his friend's money, and kind of blackmails our protagonist that if you don't give your money, also I will kill him. But he runs away from that situation instead of helping his friend because he needs his money.
Okay, I would suggest I'm going to really suggest Shritran. I'm trying. I'm not against you.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Up to this point, it gives a feeling of that.
I would like you, Shritaran, I would like you to, you have a wonderful imagination.
Yes.
Try not to go towards stereotypes. Use your imagination to go someplace to new ground.
Okay.
People, how many times I have Netflix? How many times do I have to watch a movie about someone being kidnapped? I just can't even stand it anymore. I do not watch them. I don't watch them. I don't want to read about them. I don't care. I don't care anymore.
Okay.
I don't think that world really reflects something true about my life. Try and write something that reflects something true about, but you have a wonderful imagination. I still will not forget the village that the trees, the treetops. That's an incredible location. This is an incredible place too. It is fine to write about real things and real struggle too.
Mm.
So, and then use some of that invention, right, for the times when it's really going to make sense for us to elevate, like what happens when he does go, up the mountain with his telescope, and then he falls and he breaks his leg, and now he's just on the path and he can't see anything, and he has this telescope.
Or even better, he loses his eyes.
So there you go. Use that. But Shritaran, I will say your concept of this story probably, it sounds like, still needs some work.
Yes.
The plotting and what happens. Also the writing, so that you can be more economical with the presentation. So I would really encourage you to do that if this is a story you want to pursue. We have another story of yours. So, but one of the places that you are, Shritaran, one of the places you're at is that you need to finish a story. We need you to, so, I do think that you're going in a wrong direction with a thief and a kidnapping and all of that. I'm personally not as interested in seeing that story as seeing the story that we're kind of talking about, that's more realistic, that gives him a job, try and get him the money so that he can afford the telescope that's going to solve all his problems, and then have it not solve his problems. That's the thing. That is the story that I want to read about. And if you write that, and I believe that it's true, that is going to be a good story that you can publish. And I will personally back it, and I will tell you where to send it. But make me believe that story about this character and their struggle in this town in India, right? And I am going to back that story. But you need to finish it. Let's have you read a little bit of this one. The first page is fine.
Okay, cool. Okay. The house of lawyer Thakur faced a smaller press than my own, with the vans from only a few obscure media houses stationed like idle bulls on the main road. It was around lunchtime, so I assumed most of the people in those vans might have gone for some leisure. I straightened my awkward hat and fake mustache, in case they were too shallow to give away my identity. No sooner had I pushed the gate open than a large brown dog started barking from behind. I knew of Snooper's presence, but it never failed to take me by surprise. No one could have seen the dog from outside the small gate, as most of the perimeter of the lawyer's house was just a compound green wall, with numerous potted plants covering its top and underneath as well. The guardian of the house was perfectly camouflaged behind a shrubbery. I said I am not giving any interview. Paco's voice came from the half-closed window, the only irregularity on an otherwise smooth, tall green wall. You know me, Thakur. I believe there is something we must talk about, I said. No answer came from inside for a brief while, as the dog too stopped barking, recognizing my voice. Okay. Then the door slipped just little enough for Thakur's cold black eye to confirm who the intruder was. The door remained for a moment in that state of uncertainty. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And then come inside quickly. I should have put it down. Okay, tell us a little bit about this story.
Okay, so this is about a father who has lost his daughter, gruesomely killed by a murderer, but his best friend was a defense attorney to that lawyer.
Okay.
So how this story came to, why I wanted to write this story, or why I wanted to get the story done is I just had I just watched a little YouTube video about a real incident where a school shooting has happened and the perpetrator was in a trial in a courtroom. So one defense lawyer of him gets up and says to the judge after being after a lot of trials and all that, he says we should not have we should not be no one should bear what we have endured. He says that in a courtroom full of people who has lost their children recently. I mean, that was really a bad statement to make, but I think I want to write the story of that attorney.
Okay.
Not that,
How,
not about such a character who can make such a statement.
mhm. How long do you think that this story will be?
How long as in?
Yeah.
I mean, the time period of the story.
No, how the length of the story? Do you think it'll be a novel or do you think it'll be a short
Yeah,
story?
I think it is a novel.
Okay.
Yeah, about 250 pages, 200 to 50 pages. I think it should be like that.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's possible, and I think that you can write it. This beginning is, it's stringing me along a little bit too much.
Yeah.
I think it's something that you could perhaps, I would definitely consider. I would suggest to you that you plot it out some, and that you
Yes.
understand how so you have some kind of some goals with your chapters, what you're accomplishing along the way, because doing that kind of work in terms of plotting and organization ahead of time doesn't take very long. But writing a novel does take a long time.
Yes.
And then rewriting the novel takes a long time. So the more work you can do with the least amount of effort, like plotting it, for example, the better off you are. Because if you write it from A to B, 250 pages, you're going to have so much work to do. You're going to have to write you're going to have to write, draft after draft, maybe 10 drafts of that 250 pages, and that's going to take you years. So
Yes.
do the work early.
Yes. I mean, I had the story figured out except the ending, which bugs me a lot. I mean, I did not have goals on which chapter should happen where. I mean, I just had the story figured out. I need to figure out the ending probably, and make that
Okay.
goal setting as well, as you say.
I think that there's more work to understand. So you're in the point of view of the father who has lost someone, his daughter. I don't understand any of these contexts, but that's okay. But we actually have to understand that character better. I don't feel like the reality of that character is on the page right now.
Okay.
They don't seem to, they're trying to see this lawyer who's their friend, but they don't seem to have the heart of a person who's lost their child. So
Yes, I understand. I know.
that reality in the character is not known, and I'm going to guess that maybe you don't know that feeling, but if this person has had this experience, I'm going to guess that it's really going to be a big part of their character, and we're going to have some indication of it. You can't write this character and simply not treat it, right? So when we write characters, we have to honor that character. When we choose to write a character, right, we're going to use them as a little marionette basically in our story. And we can't really do that. We can't be this god up here that's basically dancing around our marionette. Oh, we're going to have them lose their parents or lose their kid or, get robbed or whatever. We just beat them. We just beat them up as much as we want and then dance them around. We can't do that. That's not a responsible place for an author to be. Yeah. The author has to give their soul over to their character, and they have to treat them as a human being. So you are an inventive person, but being an inventive person can also make us a cold person. I'm just going to suggest. So beware of that. You clearly love language and love words. I do too. My love of language and my love of words can also make me cold. because it's just a bunch of words to me. I can write whatever words I want. I can write lost his daughter. I can write was beaten up and robbed. I can write all those words very easily without feeling the reality of those things. So that's an important place for us to, very important place for us to be as writers. I've had this experience on the other side because I've been in a lot of writing workshops where I've seen, writers, I've seen other writers, right? I don't witness it as much with myself because we don't see ourselves, but I've seen other writers who basically treat their characters like they're, just toys for their own amusement.
Yeah.
And I know how that made me feel because when I read a character, when I'm reading a story, I'm identifying with the character. I'm identifying my humanity with their humanity. And so when that character gets mistreated or they're treated like they're a simpleton or whatever it is, then I become personally offended.
Okay.
I've expressed that sometimes in workshop in ways that have been maybe too strong, but I just let you know. So that's something that needs to take place here. You need to figure out whether you can accomplish that, whether you can actually feel the feelings of this character. That's where our real imaginative capacity comes from, not with plotting, not with, oh, they were walking along and a safe fell on their head. That is not where our imaginative capacity comes from. Our imaginative capacity comes from being able to imagine the lives of other characters.
Okay, got it.
I think that if I were you, Sricharan, you are at the cusp of writing a story that you should send out and publish. I would try and encourage you to cut your teeth on the story with the telescope, right?
Okay.
That's a little bit more manageable. And if you can write that in 3,500 words, write that story in 3,500 words so that I believe it. So that I believe that this character took that telescope up to a mountain and whatever he did, right? Well, however it ends up ending, if I can believe that, you're going to have a good story, and it's going to be, 12 to 15 pages long, and you'll be able to publish it, right? So I would suggest you are a person like Pranshu, and like I am too. You have too many projects. It's easy to start stories. It's very hard to finish them. Finishing a story can take you 6 months. It can take you a year to finish your first publishable story. It can take you a very long time, but it's work that's worth doing. So I would very much encourage you to please commit to a project and try to finish it. Don't keep rewriting the beginning. Don't keep, this recursive thing. Try and finish it from A to B. Actually, Pranshu has done that with his story, even though there's many things for him to work on. He's basically written the parameters of that story. Write the parameters of the telescope story. And let's work on it. Let's get it done.
Okay.
That's what I'm really going to strongly suggest to you. It's not going to be easy. When the work gets hard, I know what it's like. When the work gets hard with one story, start another story. I know it. I've done it many times. So try and stick with the hard work. I still fail at this, Sricharan. I'm telling you, I'm not somehow beyond it. I still fail at it for sure. So that is my suggestion. I think that other story seems like a realistic story. I would like it to be realistic.
Okay.
I think it's about a real character that you know now. I think it's about a character that you know and that you can write about. I'm not sure about this character who's lost a child.
Okay.
Maybe. But you might have to season yourself a little bit more first. It's true. We season ourselves as a writer. We understand more, as we write and also as we have, broader experiences. So your writing is great. I want you to write to the next level. I think that this is something, I'll talk to Abhinav about it, but I think with some writers that have been developing their work over time, like you, maybe, I don't want to see, 20,000 story that's not working. would like to see a story that's that you're working on getting to work, right? That's like starting to get tight and economical and is written in themes, that has summary transition, next scene, that build like an actual story. I would like to see the entire story. And then we can talk about it, and then you can rewrite it. Then we'll talk about it, and you'll rewrite it, and then eventually you'll have it done, and you'll send it out to publish.
Okay.
So let's figure that out. I would scope is important when we're doing our first work. Our scope is important. Stephen King, what were his first works? His first work wasn't The Shining, I don't think. He was writing something.
Dark Tower or something.
Well, I'm sure he wrote short things. Most writers, they write short things that they can manage. The scope is small, the world is small, and then they try and do it well. And if you can do that well, there are people who believe that then you can write a novel, right? A novel in some ways is easier than writing this thing that's so economical. So I really want you to finish something. I think you have a good start with that, but you have a good start with many stories. I've seen good starts from you, Sricharan.
Yes. Yes.
So commit. You're a commitment phobe.
Yes, I think most stories I'm not able to follow through is because I don't have a clear, it's a roadmap or clear passage on how it goes. Maybe I should figure that one out also.
Yeah. Well, I think the telescope does have a clear roadmap, except for you threw basically a Molotov cocktail into it.
Okay, I think I had a roadmap on these two as well, but as you said, probably it might be difficult to get into the characters' feelings.
Yeah,
but I think I can work on it as well.
This story perhaps, but I mean it's much harder because the scope is so much bigger.
Okay.
In Defense of a Monster, the scope is so big that you have so much more to work with. The scope of the other story is simple. It reminds me of the work of some friends that I have that are very published and successful authors now that I work with, stories like that in the writing workshop. I've written stories like the one with the telescope. They are written, and you have a novel setting and a novel character. I mean, I think your characters are Indian. It takes place in some city in India, and it has this, it has a lot that I haven't seen before. So, I mean, I would like to see that, and I would like to see this city in reality that this person is in, and I would like to see this whole world basically unfold by witnessing the struggle of this one character, this aspirational struggle. But I can't push a string, Sricharan, as they say.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I will push my own string.
Yeah, pull it.
Yeah, okay,
you can pull it. I can't. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Vandana, thank you. Sricharan, thank you. Everyone else has dropped off.